everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul, and we're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast, where we discuss the ongoing lives and issues of people with developmental disabilities to spark positive change in the field.
And we have a lot of fun doing it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friends for Life podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, we have Cara Lloyd and we have John here from OSDA. How are you both doing this afternoon?
Doing good.
Fantastic.
Hello.
Good to hear. So you're one of, I think, our third guest who's driven quite a ways to come to the podcast studio. So welcome. Hope you had a good drive in. So how you doing?
I'm doing good. And glad to do this cast and stuff. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
And it's good to get out of Urbana every now and then.
Yeah.
See some big cities, not instead of cow pastures and horses.
I hear that.
So the whole way here, John was giving me the history of the counties that we were going through, the cities we were going through. So I learned a lot on my drive today. So that was good. It was worth getting up really early and driving all the way to Toledo.
Yeah. Well, just in the pre conversations that we had, I mean, I've gotten a whole lot of information. So I really think like this is going to be one of those episodes that really turns out to be very informational. And because John, you know a lot, man.
I know enough to be dangerous, but I talk about many different subjects, so people think I'm but I enjoyed history because so many of the kids that we go in and talk about education of people with disabilities think that I've lived it and stuff. And when you're doing school kids now and you tell them that I'll be 66, then they say, oh, my grandparents are 59 and stuff. So but I'm still happy that I'm teching and able to talk about OSDA and it's it is self-determination group and all and stuff. So we really try to be very diversified and stuff in what we do. And we try to have like a group office that's a extension of OSDA, Ohio Council of Leaders, called COOL. Okay. And that's how we could get some of our board members there. And then we do Project STIR, and Tara could tell you what STIR stands for.
Steps towards independence.
Yes. Yeah. And then that could be, you can only have so many on a board, but we try to make it to where everybody can be a part of it and stuff like that and still give input and all. And do different trainings because we don't want to leave anybody out of advocacy. There's no bench in advocacy. I've done Special Olympics since '68, and sometimes if you do basketball or softball or something, you got to have a bench. Well, in advocacy, you don't see benches because nobody is going to be.
Nobody gets to sit out.
Nobody gets set out, and everybody is needed in some different ways and all. Ohio self-determination used to be Ohio supported living.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it was made up of professionals and stuff through the 90s. The state of Ohio used to do a conference on residential and stuff like that, and they didn't want to do it anymore, and they wanted to shift it back to the counties. So that's how OSDA got started and stuff. And it was a provider agency group, but ours is a provider agency of DD boards of superintendents, COG members, family members, and people of disabilities.
Gotcha.
And disabilities is the only equal opportunity thing there is. You could have a disability and also get a disability. I could go visually impaired. I could lose my hearing and stuff. Or you could be like Christopher Reeves and fall off a horse and get a disability,
So, John, how did you get involved with OSDA, from the start?
Our Champaign Residential Services is where I work at, and it's a provider agency that provides people with disabilities and all. And I'm the only one that draws revenue because I get 20 hours a week of supported living, and I get a paycheck because I work 40 hours at Champaign. So I'm productive in drawing revenue and productive in receiving revenue and all those things. So that's stuff that we do and all. And I used to go to Longview, which was our county board system, and I always worked at the cemetery or flower shops and stuff. But when I got this job at CRSI, I got to be connected with people first of Ohio, the ARC, and then OSDA. Nancy Richards and Dana Charlton, and them were very active in OSDA. And if you'd ever want to do a travel cast, we'll have a picnic tomorrow, and I'll let Carla share what's on the menu and stuff.
All right.
And to get us anywhere, if you mention food, I mean, that's going to be 90% of the goal.
So just to piggyback on what John was saying, the OSDA he mentioned started out as a supported living group, but it's really switched their gears more in the 90s when self-determination became more of an issue. Gotcha. So they're promoting self-determination and advocacy across the state of Ohio. As John mentioned, there are 19 members of the board, and it's important for OSDA that that's a very diverse board. So there are, like John mentioned, people that are providers, people that work for county boards, also family members, people with a disability, and I don't think I'm missing anything, but it's and they're representing different regions of the state, so not everybody's from a certain area. Right. The Council of Ohio Leaders that John mentioned, and he's a member. John's a member of our board and Council of Ohio Leaders. Oh. So anytime there's a person with a disability, we try to also have them on the board. We try to also have them be part of the Council of Ohio Leaders, and that was developed with a little bit of push from the Ohio DD Council. There's someone that grants fund some of what we do, and they were looking for us to help promote leadership in people with people with developmental disabilities to assume leadership roles, because that just strengthens your advocacy. Yes. You can be a great self-advocate, but if you can get up and advocate for others and be part of in a leadership role, that's where a lot of stuff gets done. So the Council of Ohio Leaders is made up of, again, all people with developmental disabilities that receive services, but from around the state. Excuse me. So that we have, and from all of our regions. I'm trying to think what else I wanted to piggyback on that you said. You did so good.
We try to teach people to advocate for themselves also, because sometimes you may be something that you have to advocate for, like for OSDA, for Ohio Council of Leaders. A lot of people have problems affording gas money and stuff. So those that need it, we give them a stipend. And then at Project Stir Trainer, we give them a stipend. And if you were advocating to me, you would have to be a Buckeye fan. But as I see, we give people rights to choose other teams, such as Michigan, such as USC, UCLA.
So and that's his right.
Yeah, and it's your,
at least in Big Ten, right?
Yeah, and Ohio, we got a very strong action club group down in Athens County. Don't mention Ohio State or you get your mouth washed out with soap, because they're the Bobcats of Ohio University. And then we have some up in Cleveland area, the Zits and Akron University. And Akron, to get people in there, will sometimes have a disability day for the Summit County Board of DD. And they're happy being Zit thing. And then some people just don't like sport. So
that's me.
That's me.
And if you're going to be teaching people how to advocate, sometimes you're going to be the person they'll advocate to, like such as, we did a lot of training from developmental centers that when they downsized, and a lot of people that lived in developmental centers always thought you had to have a cheeseburger, a Coke, and fries. Well, a lot of them didn't know you could get a Sprite or you could get fish sandwiches or something like that. So
perspective
of making choices. And some choices you make, Carla and I have talked about, you eliminate choices. So if you go to Kentucky Fried Chicken or if you go to Cracker Barrel, you eliminated your choice of ice cream.
Right.
Because they don't serve it. And if you go to the McDonald's, you eliminated your choice of Pepsi or Wendy's. We've got to name our local group so we can get sponsors from Wendy's and Bob Evans. And hopefully you'll be so popular that you'll have people knocking on your door to sponsor you.
There you go.
I'd like to get Bob Evans to sponsor us. I love Bob Evans.
I know. I could get just an omelet right now. That sounds really good.
Oh, yes. And tell how many you have hit on your channels and stuff like that.
Heck yeah.
And show how you're doing a disservice and all that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, just to piggyback on what John was saying too, what I love that you were explaining, John, is that OSDA is really trying to hit advocacy on every level. So we're looking at big policy, right? So we're helping legislators know what they need to do as far as to better their advocacy, better our system. But we're also doing training for folks that are maybe coming out of a developmental center or getting ready to transition from high school to a community job, right? So that's where the Project STIR training comes in. So Project STIR is a training that we do that is people with disabilities training other people with disabilities how to advocate for themselves. And that starts with, do you remember the first lesson? That starts with knowing yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know yourself and what you like and don't like. So if I don't like Pepsi, then that's going to eliminate my choice of going to
Taco
Dairy Queen.
Bell.
There you go.
Taco Bell.
I can't remember which one's mine.
Dairy Queen or,
Yeah, right.
or Pizza Hut.
But if I don't know that about myself, then I can't make those choices. So we spend a lot of time on knowing yourself, learning how to communicate. So we talk about passive, aggressive, and assertive communication in Project STIR, so that people understand the difference between being passive and letting people make decisions for you, being aggressive where no one hears you because you're being scary, and then being assertive, and just learning how to speak up for yourself and say, excuse me, I want to say in this.
Do either one of you think that there is like an emotional connection or breakdown of connection between some maybe SSAs and this thought process? Because I can even personally say, because I'm a huge advocate of independence. I think once you have a waiver and you are utilizing that waiver, the goal should be to decrease it at least annually, at least a little bit. It doesn't always have to be an entire day gone or anything, but we should be working together for that independence. Are you both seeing any pushback from?
So I think some of that comes from the leadership of the county board. So what's expected of the SSAs? I think you've been around in the field a while. I've been around 20 years. And SSAs, when I was direct care staff 20 years ago, were people that had been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
They were going to retire in that job, had a lot of, I don't want to call them seasoned. That sounds weird.
It's
a little
all right.
seasoning. And now there's a lot of new people coming in, becoming SSAs. And so they're going to follow the leader. They're going to follow leadership. And if the leadership of the county board isn't promoting self-advocacy and independence like you were talking about, then they're not going to know that's an expectation in their job. Now, I will say COVID has done a lot of really cool things for our industry. I mean, we have proven, John and I were talking on the way up here about how, we just keep relying on staff and throwing staff at a problem.
Yes.
Right? So it's not going well here. Let me just throw more staff at it, right? And then the SSA is saying, well, I've given you double staff. Why isn't it getting better? Things like that. Well, what we learned is, we're going to run out of staff at some point. Right?
Correct.
And so we've used technology now and help people become more independent because they had to use the computer to meet with their doctor, had to use the computer to connect with grandma that I haven't seen. So technology has really kind of, I think, pushed our industry forward in that way that it's increased independence whether we liked it or not.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that too, because there's the telemedicine program for those with disabilities that was just announced.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's going to be a really cool thing. I know a couple of years ago, there was a grant that along Friends for Life and other providers tried to get. I think Sunshine actually, they were manning it up, but we asked to be a part of it. We didn't win it, so
Happens.
but it would have been something so helpful during those times and still even now. But I want to say there were almost, because they're going to be doing it for ICFs, community-based services, and anybody basically served by
Didn't the
DoD.
state of Ohio buy a bunch of slots and then the county boards are... Because I only heard about it in Franklin County, but I know it's statewide.
Yeah.
And I think we're talking about the same thing.
I'm pretty sure.
I mean, as long as we're... So, again, I think every industry is probably like this. Ours is not exclusive. And that there's always like the next best thing, right?
Yeah.
So here we are. So we have a great idea. I think it's going to work really well for people. But we can't just say like that's what it's going to be, right? Telehealth, we've learned, isn't scary, right? I do a couple of my doctor's appointments telehealth. It saves me a trip. I don't have to park. It's fantastic.
And with gas prices right now, no one wants
I
to
know,
drive
right?
anywhere.
Do I want a telehealth cardiologist? Probably not.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, as long as we're not pushing people and we find out what they want and they have a free choice to pick whoever they want, I think it'd be a great service. It's going to help, I think, that kind of continuity of care that we're missing sometimes in our industry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's going to help that continuity of care in that, we do have staff turnover. And sometimes you're taking someone to the doctor that you don't know well, that isn't able to speak, and you're having to provide medical information. So so it can help, but as long as we're not losing sight of, like, oh, that's the next best thing, let's dump everybody into that.
Well, we got deep into conversation already in the podcast,
Sorry.
which is great. No, that's what we want.
John and I can be intense, can't we, John?
It's awesome. I love it. But you guys work very well together. But we missed the important part of the podcast is how did you get started in this field? Because
oh my gosh, how did any of us get started in this field?
I don't know.
Nobody. Have you ever talked to a 9-year-old that said, I want to be on call 24 hours a day? And that's just not where we ended up. So I think we all came from wherever we came from. And then we ended up, with me, I always wanted to help people. Like, I like being with people. It's important to me that I'm able to kind of keep my feet on the ground with people. And so all of the jobs I've had in this industry, whether it was I did residential, I do behavior support as well as work for OSDA, is that I'm with people and connecting. I don't have my story honestly was I was getting my degree in speech and hearing science, and I was working in my dad's shoe store. And that didn't seem like it connected. So I thought I better get used to being around people that might need some kind of speech or hearing therapy, not really knowing that doesn't happen a lot with adults in our service or in our industry. But I just answered an ad in the paper to work direct service. I ended up working with 3 ladies with Prader-Willi syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with Prader-Willi syndrome.
I am.
Yes, it's
Paul he's lost.
There's a lot of things that go into that disability that are complicated. And I enjoyed working with ladies who other people may have seen as difficult or someone they didn't love being around. And I was able to develop deep connections with them, understand them. And, I just attended one of their funerals a few weeks ago. She was family to me. And so I took pride in taking someone that maybe your average person will go, ooh, you're cussing at me. I don't know what to do with you. And I can just see that as that's grit. That's just part of her personality. There's a person underneath that. So I enjoy and that's part of the behavior support stuff I do too, is I love working with people that are not understood and helping. They think behavior support is someone coming in and teaching this person how to not do these things anymore. That's not how it works. It's coming in and teaching the people that work with that person how to understand them and teaching the person how to say what they need in a productive way. So that's why that's part of what OSDA is great for me for, is that I just love the idea of people getting comfortable with having to ask for what they need and that they have rights, but they also have responsibilities, right?
Right. I got started because I went through school. It will be 50 years ago since I started school.
Whoa.
That was in 62, so that was before a lot of you were even thought.
How big's your class reunion, John? You get a big school?
I went to mechanics, and Longview has about 30 out of our class reunion and stuff that we create. Before, it was in Champaign County in size, out of 88 counties in population, we're 65th. So they weren't too much on the cutting edge of education and stuff. And you're back in the 60s. We don't do special ed, but we have a wonderful DD school. So let's go here. And so that's how I got started. And then I got started through Than Johnson, who got me to work at Champaign Residential Services. And I told him I had the most experience in the field because I worked with myself. So that was stuff that we've done. But I just love it because I did Special Olympics. I know people from other counties and my border count. And I went to the international games in 1983, played basketball and all.
What position?
I played power forward, believe it or not.
I believe it.
And all that. And we won bronze medal, and I met with Eunice Kennedy because she comes out. It was not Eunice, but it was Joseph Shriver that comes out and hands your medals and stuff of the Kennedy things. But I think a lot of people, you accidentally fall in the fields.
Yeah. And that's so funny that you say that. I think one of the things when I was younger, it never it didn't sound right when people would ask me, hey, what do you want to be? Oh, a doctor, a lawyer. Like none of those things felt
Doesn't it feel
real.
like there's only like 10 options?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of jobs, but everyone's going to be a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer. I mean,
like who's going to be a farmer?
Right.
Like, is anybody going to make our food?
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Through the years, it sounds like you've been advocating for a while. I'm sure, John, that you've been around when the ADA and stuff was getting passed.
Oh, in 1990 when
Yes.
President Bush passed it. And I've been around when they did the county boards. 1967 when we got it. And we wanted county board people to get good money instead of have to work for gas money and tires on your cars. A lot of our county boards were started out by faith and prayer and stuff, how we're going to do it, how many bake sales do we have, how many of this, and then we got so where we went on and got tax credited and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember residential getting started in 76, and what helped out with OPRA, the Ohio Providers Group resource is downsizing of developmental centers. Our developmental centers like Orient and Gallup Police, and a lot of them was bigger than some cities.
Yeah.
Orient had 11,000 people.
Ooh.
Where I'm from in Urbana, we have about 12,000 people in our city. So a lot of them were cities. And Knox County, the Mount Vernon Developmental Center, had their own plumbers, their own fire department and stuff like that. And then they downsized and got so where they contract out with the communities and stuff to do it and all. And I think when we all got to talking about, we thought we would do the visually impaired, put them in an institution, the people that were deaf, put them in and we found out that you can only put so much land, and you run out of land to where you could put people with disabilities. So I think the community concept helped to get started in the 70s and stuff and all. And then it's expensive to run a great big elegant.
Yes.
If you go to Gallup Police or you go to Tiffin Developmental Center has their own greenhouse.
Nice.
They grow their poinsettias and stuff there. They were a community and all. And it gets expensive to run 57 acres.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So, Cara, you run the Advocacy Wednesday live stream, which is awesome. I was on that, I think, a few weeks ago and watching. And what you're doing is really good. It's in the same vein of what we're doing, is you're just trying to put a voice out there on the internet for people with disabilities who, often get overlooked. I mean, that's not a secret. People that have disabilities are kind of like the last in line for everything. Like DSPs are the last in line for money.
Yeah,
People with disabilities are the last in line for services and things like that. A lot of the time it feels like. So what caused you to want to start that? Because, it's really awesome what you're doing, getting the community involved.
Well, it just goes back to, always looking for opportunities for people to assume a leadership role. Because the more comfortable you are, either sitting in a leadership role or learning about how to be a leader, the better you're going to be at speaking out for yourself. So that's always been a goal of OSDA, is to promote that leadership. So Steve Pelton is the owner of We Thrive Together, and we had worked with him on a couple other things, and he has been a real supporter of ours. And he does programming, like educational programming on that platform. So he asked us to do it with him. And so we try every week to feature someone with a disability who is either taken on a leadership role or brings in someone who can speak to us about something that is important to us. So we, in the beginning, we were talking before we got on here about, sometimes it's hard to find people to come in and talk. And we definitely felt that in the beginning. We were calling in a lot of favors. Please come in and talk. But as people saw other people speaking, then it started to catch on. And now, we're booked out till July.
Nice.
We've got a lot of people knocking on our door that we get to now be choosy. Someone comes to me and says, I want to come talk. I'm able to say something like, well, where's your person with a disability? How are you promoting leadership? Can't be on till you're doing that, right? So So that's been really cool. And then I know Steve has partnered with a lot of counties to bring them on. So when you see on that Zoom call it says 35 people, it's actually probably more like 55 because we've got groups that are tuning in that are just kind of using that one entry. But it's been really fun. It's an hour out of my week that is one of my favorites. And the best part, John and I were talking about this on the way coming up, is one of my favorite things is when folks get a little underestimated, and then they say something brilliant, and it kind of puts people in their place. And so I love when we might have a speaker on who doesn't have a disability. This is my favorite. We had a provider on, and she brought somebody with her that she serves, and she went through his whole presentation, and it was great. And I'm a fan of that provider. I think they do good work. But I mean, the first question, okay, you have a question. We call on the person. She goes, "Yeah, I had your provider agency, and you stink." Right on there. So she had to answer to that, and I thought, wow, that's cool. That's real. Yeah, that's how she felt, and she said it. And they they were able to work through it a little bit on the broadcast, but it was just honest, and I thought that was cool.
I think there needs to be more honesty. There's this misguided thought that you can just know when something's wrong and know when someone's not happy. Yeah. And, I think it goes on both sides. Yeah. We've been let go by people before, and they never told us why. Yeah. And then you hear why, and you're like, oh, yeah, we could have changed that day.
We could have done that, yeah. Well, and we teach people with disabilities a lot of times from a young age to be compliant.
Compliant, yes.
And so you don't hear what's really going on, or you hear something that's, and people without disabilities do this too, where you have to figure out what it is, because I might be talking about this subject. I mean, married couples do it all the time, right? We're fighting about who makes the bed, but really, what are we fighting about? There's something behind it, and so and that happens, in our community too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, and it's good to have a conversation. I think there's some quote that's like, something about the more hard conversations you have, the easier your life's going to be. And that's really important because it's definitely it's easier to sit back and not say anything because you think that maybe it's going to go away, but we all know that that's not true. It usually just makes things worse. Mm-hmm. So it's good. I think what you're doing, also putting this out on the internet is important because we're in the age of the internet. There's no denying that. That's where everything is. That's where all the money is. Mm-hmm. Maybe that and oil. But the internet is the new frontier, and I think it's important that we get more agencies and people with disabilities out there speaking about this stuff because it's a huge microphone. And I think it's what you're doing is innovative and smart, and you're allowing people to say what they need to say, and calling people out's part of that. That's part of the game. I mean, there's probably people who don't like what we're doing, and it's like, well, come on the podcast and let's figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's funny. I've always said this. There's tons of you. The more I think that. I hate using this word because success can be very, it's person-centered, basically, for success. But anybody that I fell out with in my life, I've always been willing to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with a third party there and somebody to say, hey, yeah, Tony, you're not seeing this right. Yeah. A lot of people are scared of that. Yeah.
Don't you find those are the richest relationships you have when you've gone through some turmoil together?
Yes.
I have friends that we've had issues, going through just our life together, and we always come out better. You can be more honest with those people because you've already been through it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's the people you have to tiptoe around that you never really get there.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I'm very direct, John.
And I think a lot of that is something, if you don't take care of a blister on your foot, and you let it grow, and all of a sudden then it becomes infected and stuff. Right. And I think a lot of stuff that we get to the place with providers, county boards and all, that is an explosion instead of a little blister or something. Yes. And it boils over, and then that person has problems. And then you get into another problem. Let's try to behavior plan on that person. When it could have been something just the two of you sitting down and all talking.
Figured out.
Well, we have a really touchy-feely field, right? It's a lot of nice people that don't want to, they got in it because they care, and so having difficult conversations is not it's not in their DNA. Yeah. So it's you have to kind of force yourself to do it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want to get good at difficult conversations, go work at a collections agency for a while.
Yeah, that could be part of the training. We have to do 8 hours of training, right? You do 2 hours at a collection agency, people are yelling at you. Yep. And you're like, see, you made it through.
Speaking of, kind of off subject, but it's in the line of what we're doing. I was called by a bill collector. They're saying,
you gotta pay your bills.
Yeah, look, that's what I thought I did. Like, goodness. But around 06 or 07, it was even before me and my wife were married, we owed like some school tax. And now it's going all the way down to these other attorneys, this, that, and the other. Well, this lady calls me about it. I told her, like, hey, I'm going to have my accountant look into it. We'll take care of anything. If we owe, we'll pay. She calls me back the next day, and I think this is probably the part of the job that you used to hate when you used to have to do this, Paul. But I can hear just anger in her voice. Like, well, I didn't receive it. And I'm like, well, I didn't hear back from my accountant. You called me on a Friday evening. It's now a Monday morning. You know, my accountant probably wasn't in the office. We'll get back to you. Now, what she doesn't know is that Sunday, the day prior, was my birthday. My mom died on my birthday. 5 years ago.
That.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the condolences. So it's a very emotional time for me.
Right.
So you calling me in the morning after that, and we had another family dilemma that happened on that day. Now, I say all of that to say is we have to sometimes approach people with the thought that they're going through trauma, that they're going through something, and we can't always just force our opinion or our feelings on people. And like, I kind of snapped at the lady. So she hung up. I got my composure and I tried to call back. She's like, well, I don't want to talk. I got closed. And she hung back up. So I'm like, you know what, Tony, just leave it alone. Let your attorneys and whoever needs to handle it. But it was something that could have been averted if she would have just took the time to say, okay, I'm sorry, sir. Let's take this back. Well, what are the next steps? How can we do this? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just,
let's hope she found other employment. Maybe she found some zen somewhere else.
Look, I hope so. If not, hey, she's just going to be mad.
Well, you're right. You don't know what somebody else is going through, right? You don't know.
It's difficult.
And you don't know at that moment what I may catch you on a day where you're cheerful and stuff, and then you may have like your daughter or somebody just got hit by a car. So if I said that to you, that would tick. But it would be like on March the 5th, where other times both of you might be good guys.
Right.
I got a question to ask both of you.
Hit.
Do you feel that advocacy is a journey or a destination?
Ooh, a forever journey, I believe.
Yeah. I would say.
Yeah.
You agree with that, because Dana Charlton and I have talked about it. The exec was talking about it on the way up, that it's always something, that it's a destination, and with us having term limits in the Ohio Senate and House, it's always a destination to re-educate them. And we try to talk to, in different groups, try to educate your village council, know who to advocate for. If it's a ramp in the sidewalks, that's where you go to city or village council. If it's money for your direct support person, that's where you go to the State House in Columbus. And we had a couple that's on Cool Board wanted to get married and that somehow wouldn't go with disability stuff. So we advocated you go to your Congress and Sherrod Brown. So we teach people also how to advocate to what. And if it's a church or a community hall, you would advocate to the deacon board or the trustees of that things. It's important to know who to advocate for. Some people you may get and just let you blow off steam, but that's no good because you're not fixing the problem when you're blowing off steam.
Yeah, I actually I ran for council. It was an open seat. Rest in peace to the gentleman who held the seat before me. I won.
Congratulations.
So I got to sit on last year. My term ended December of last year. Thankfully, but it was a very good educational experience. I even went to some neighboring council meetings that had to deal with certain like trash can scenarios for waste products of the humankind, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, this is a good way for me to understand and know what is council thinking, how are they thinking. And I mean, that year I learned so much on how to be a better advocate through
And being advocated too.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're all good advocates. I mean, we'll all four, and we'll go advocate that Bob Evans needs a wider handicap door. But will we be willing to advocate when I'm saying I'm running low on gas money, I'm coming to these meetings, I need money.
Well, and that's a really good point, because that is something that OSDA has done a lot of advocating for, is that there are organizations that will ask someone with a disability to come and speak in a meeting or in a represent maybe their county in a conference, and we really push for people to be paid to do that.
Yeah.
You're asking for their time. Their time is valuable. It's the same as you and I. There was something else, John, you said that I thought, just about policy advocating in general. That I love, John, how you said about, there's a new guard all the time.
Yeah.
So there's this constant, making sure that the next round of congressmen, the next round of city council, the next round is getting the same information. And that is part of what we teach in Project STIR. But that, that is not my forte. On the legislative part, John's got a brain for it. He's really good at knowing who to go to
I go
for
to
what.
my city council and even township trustee meetings and stuff. I like to dabble in politics, but I don't want to dive into it. What got you interested in being council?
Like I said, I've been a huge part of my community, but I knew that I didn't know enough for how the inner workings were, and so that was basically it. I think everybody needs to put themselves out there in a community, and I've never had a problem doing that as I've come to age. I don't really think there's enough of it anymore. I think too many people are just into mind your own business, stay back. If there's something weird going on, just record it and leave it at that. Like, okay, well, what do we do to fix this so it doesn't happen again, or how can we get the funding? And it's a realization when you are on council, you're able to see how the budgets are.
Yeah.
And you like, wow.
You find all that minutia that you didn't know was there. Yeah.
So it was a real eye opener. But it definitely put me in a place where I came out with more ideas to continue doing. Now a lot of my advocacy is for DSPs. I am trying to figure out a way, because I don't agree with this notion that we just need to wait for voters and our politicians. I have an idea and a plan, and this is like my third or fourth time teasing it on the show. But once it's done and it's out, everyone's going to be able to say, yes, that's actually a pretty decent idea. And it will be able to line the pockets of your DSPs or even, any healthcare worker is the goal. I want all healthcare workers to have that extra funding there. So that's the reason that I got into it. I just knew it had to be a better way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
would you ever be mayor?
Ooh. Yeah, I'm going to pass on that.
But you get to, when you're married, don't you get to be in the parade and stuff? You get to wave.
You'd be grand marshal.
Yes, you get to cut ribbons. All kinds of stuff.
I'm too nervous to go back down the whole of campaigning and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it comes off to me like this is campaigning for me. Sure. I'm fine doing this. But going and trying to prove to people that I'm this perfect being and all of this, that's what I constantly see. And I'll be the first one campaigning like, hey, I'm far from perfect.
Right.
Maybe I had too much whiskey last night and I don't feel good this morning. Yeah. I'm just real like that.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of honesty in politics, right?
Exactly.
So the people that excel in it are ones that are able to kind of create that facade. And then that's how we end up with what we end up with.
And I think a lot of that comes out to like your provider field. The county board got to be politic. And my mother, she has been deceased for 30 years, but my mother saw me as little Johnny. My provider that works with me sees me as Mr. Hannah. But if you're like anywhere turned 18 and you have another one that is 50, that's where we're back to the age. Different people see us different ways. And the county boards to providers always tries to sell the people as good little children. Good little children aren't in their 30s, 50s, 18 and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think the county board needs to go back to your honesty, be honest. If this person didn't have problems, we wouldn't need you as a provider.
That's right.
You're going off of somebody's lack of abilities to do for themselves. And I think that's where we need to tell DSPs that it's not a bed of roses, that sometimes there's thorns. And
Well, like everybody, right? So you're like selling people short when you paint them in a rosy picture, because some of the thorns and stuff are like probably what some of the coolest stuff about people.
I have been told I have been the blooming of the rose, and I've been the thorn of the rose, and I've been the manure that helps the rose. So I can go either part of the rose.
One thing that helps me get through it is I just realized that us as human beings as a collective, we're not as smart as we thought. Just 2 people ago, we were having Salem witch trials.
I know.
Like, I mean, if you 120 to 130 years ago, I mean, they were literally burning people.
I know. I was trying to explain that to my 9-year-old the other day. He was like, no, wait a minute. So they would tell them that if they could float, they were a witch, but if they sank, they weren't. Didn't they just die then? Yes, Barrett, they died. Like, I mean, just... And I didn't know if that really happened or if that was just on what is that, Quest for the Holy Grail? Or, I don't know,
Python.
I'm pretty sure. I feel it was real.
Monty Python. Yes.
I love that movie. But so everybody's been making awesome points about, what it really comes down to, I think, is back to you saying knowing yourself. Like, Tony tried politics and he realized maybe this wasn't what I thought it was, and maybe it's not for me, and putting your energy toward what is important to you. I think that's like a really hard thing for people to grasp on, because everyone wants to have an image, everyone wants to be this person, but it's like you have to know who you are. Back to what you said, you have to know who you are before you can help other people. You have to know what you're about before you can help others. So John, a question for you is, as a self-advocate, it can probably be scary for people to get out and try and talk with congressmen or advocate, because, it's intimidating to talk to people sometimes and put your voice out there. Do you have any advice for people who would like to maybe advocate, but at the same time might be a little intimidated?
Start out with your closest thing. If you get the county board, sometimes advocate for them to what you need. Advocate to your provider. And I think we in the field has to be willing to say, we're great teachers and great advocates, but are we good at supplying advocacy when we're called on to do that? Like, if you need more miles, I would not tell Tony as my city council. I'd have to tell my SSA, Service and Support Administrator and staff and all, or my provider and stuff. And that's where you got to teach. And then if you get up there, go to your fairs, meet your city, county, your county commissioners and stuff. Like, someday Tony may be a state rep in here.
Yep. You never know. I think if you were on my team and help push me, I would definitely run that.
And stuff. So I think it's how, could he be? Or out of the blue, you may get inspired by Tony and want to run for a village council. Or are you a city or a village that you served on council?
It was village.
Village, okay. Well, Paul could serve or whatever.
Yeah, Paul. Come on.
That's a no for me.
I always try to get Dana to be DD director.
I know.
She said no.
She said no. But one of the things that Dana, and we have talked about Dana a couple times. We probably want to say who Dana is.
Yeah,
she's the executive director of Ohio Self-Determination Association, has a long career in this field and a wealth of knowledge, and she leads the organization along with the board. But one of the things she always talks about, just to piggyback on what you were saying, is that you also want to be prepared with something to say. So you never know when the opportunity is going to present itself for you to advocate or say something that's important to you or important to the people that you care about or support. So you almost want to just always be a little bit prepared to say something.
Yeah. So
then you're not so nervous.
Yeah, absolutely. That is very important. So, Tony, I think this is a good time to play a little game. What do you think?
I think it's perfect. And that game is rapid
Guitar
fire
music.
Rapid fire.
Yes, rapid fire. And yeah, we should probably have Paul start playing the guitar.
He tried it. It's out of tune. He blamed your kids.
Oh, yeah.
That is not an unfair blame, okay? It is definitely.
I can promise you it was probably the.
Okay, then I was looking forward to hearing guitar music.
I'll tune her up when we're done.
Well, tune her up for next year when you come to self-determination project.
The OSDA picnic.
All right.
Yes.
Beautiful.
You
Well,
could be our entertainment.
Yeah. We won't pay. We're not paying.
I don't know about that. I
Well,
don't know
you
if
could
that-
put a cup out and see
Yeah,
what
put a
you're.
cup out.
You want people to come, right?
Well, we won't tell them you're coming.
Oh,
It'll
okay,
just be a
okay.
bonus.
There we go.
If they will be on air, you'll have half the people that will be
Yes,
tickled
yes,
to
yes,
death,
yes.
All
and
right.
they may sing along with you. So
I'll have to learn some
our
classics.
people, and some of our group enjoys having a good time.
I hear that.
I have always had many requests, but I go ahead and sing to them anyway, even though I have been, but sometimes you got to just say, if I'm going to get insulted, I can take it, and I don't. And I think a lot of people that advocate in this field aren't willing to get their feelings hurt. And if you're going to be an advocate and stuff,
Sometimes you hear no.
you hear no and why that. You just got to make up some of your mind what I'm advocating for. That if my sisters and father always had the thing is, if two people's going to be unhappy, make sure it's not you because you live with yourself.
I love it.
Have the other person. So that's how I go on, like I can ask, and if they do know and they said we've already talked about it, and saying until something gets done, I'll continue to talk about it. So get used to listening to that subject until
Yeah,
it gets
I agree.
done. So that's how I go on.
Well, right on.
Are we going to get rapid fired now?
Yeah,
Yes.
rapid fire.
All right, let me cough.
Okay. Rapid fire is set up in a way that it's 3 questions in a would you rather scenario. So I will ask you both the question. You have to say it as quick as you possibly can to let me know which one you would pick. Are you both ready?
Yeah. We're going to do it one at a time. Like she'll go first with her 3, and then I'll.
Oh, nope. You both are going to do the
Just
same
going to
thing.
answer at the same time.
You can answer at the same
Okay.
time.
Okay.
That'll be fine. All right. Would you rather eat chocolate flavored poo or poo flavored chocolate?
We have to answer this.
Yes.
I'm saying poo flavored chocolate.
Poo flake. I'd have to go with that.
Less bacteria.
Yeah.
Paul is so disgusting right now.
Where did you get that question?
A lot of these, I think about my kids. So when they watch and
It does sound like something
there's
my kid would
always
ask me.
some poo stuff
And it
in
would
there.
be dinner time too when they
Yes.
ask this question.
All right, next. Would you rather be a slow tiger or a very fast sloth? Yeah, these are
I'm
deep.
going to say fast sloth.
Isn't that cool? Then you get the Wolverine claws.
I have the claw. Slow tiger. You won't get to eat or anything like that.
Yeah, you'd be.
That's why I would rather be the fast
Yeah.
sloth than the slow
Smart.
Plus sloth, I feel like sloths get more naps.
Yeah.
And I like naps.
There you go.
Naps are my jam. All right. Would you rather see 15 minutes into your own future or 15 minutes into someone else's future?
If it's winning the lottery, I'd rather see 15 minutes into my future. If it's not, I'd rather see 15 minutes into somebody else's.
I like that answer.
Gosh, I don't know. I guess my own. But like, what could I be doing 15 minutes from now? It's really that interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I get in a car accident or something, that would be
Yeah.
terrible. But like, I don't know.
You could take a nap in 15
I
minutes.
could. Well, I have to. John and I are driving, so I can't really nap today. But
You can see how that works out.
Yes.
Get a Tesla.
oh yeah, that's the listen. As soon as those self-driving cars are affordable, and I feel like I'm not going to die,
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to
hear
be.
that.
Perfect.
But my cruise control doesn't work like when it's raining sometimes, so I don't think we're even close.
yeah, fair enough. So, first off, I want to thank both of you for making the long drive out here. It's been an
Yes.
awesome conversation. And before we go, I would like to give you the opportunity to let people know where they can learn more about OSDA, or if you have social media or whatever, anything you want to throw out there, and then any closing statements you want the world to know.
Well, I'm going to give you the floor for closing
Okay.
statements, and then I'll give them the contact stuff. How about
Okay.
that?
I'd say that OSDA, it's good to know that that we're like the hand. Booker T. Washington come up with this, and we're like the hands, but yet we're separate as the fingers and stuff, but how the hand and the wrist. And we try to work with people first. Our Synergy conference is people first, PAR, and the direct support professionals and stuff. and that we have a lot of good ideas like that. And people first, I mentioned a lot. Craig Walker would be a good person to have on, and then Adam Angles and different things for your podcast would be good, and all. And coming to Synergy, Steve and Steve's helper did a podcast at OSDA at Synergy last year and talked to people at the conference and stuff. And I think it's interesting that everybody's got to know what you want to advocate for, because if you depend on others, they may not advocate for you. And in my job, I had to advocate to my brother and sister that I wanted to work for CRSI instead of working at Longview Industry. And they said if you go to CRSI, Champaign Residential Services, you wouldn't go back. But now the Champaign County Board has privatized DAHABs, and we have 4 providers in Champaign County.
That's good. That's good. The more providers, the merrier for a scenario like that.
So as far as getting a hold of us, so we do have a website. It's osdaohio.com. We have a Facebook page. There's a OSDA Facebook, and then there's a Project Stir Facebook. We have Advocacy Wednesday, if anybody's interested, I'll leave you my email address as well. Do you want me to say my email address?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because you can email me and I can get you on our list serve, so you'll get all the information about different Project Stirs coming up, Advocacy Wednesday. I do want to pause just for a second about the Synergy Conference, because if you guys have you heard of the Synergy Conference? Mark your calendars. October
5th or the
7th. It's at Kalahari in Sandusky. And John mentioned the partners that we have. It is very important for that conference that there is equal representation of people with disabilities and people that support the industry and families. So it is there's no tracks. There's no like disability track, professional track. Everybody's together. It's life-changing. It would be great to have you guys there. Bring a couple people you serve or some direct care folks.
Definitely.
That'd be great.
And we encourage direct care work. That's why workers.
Yeah. And it's a great time because you're at Kalahari. I mean, there's bars, so you can get
ice cream, snacks.
There's ice cream places.
We always get cabanas where we go.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah. So if you email me, which my email address is clloyd LLOYD @dpioh.com. I can get you on our listserv, and you can get all the information about that stuff. But we'll be around.
Yeah, then give them Dana's email.
Oh, and OSDA 2011 @gmail.com. That one's probably a little easier to remember. Dana's. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. We will definitely do everything we can to raise awareness and get your information out there, and so people can check out Advocacy Wednesdays. Great program. Yep. And I think we'll be going on there at some point in the future. So
before we leave, we're getting a date.
All right. Well, thank you both.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you guys are great.
Thank you. I enjoyed the time. This is where it's almost a shame to take a paycheck. Notice I said almost.
Almost.
Yeah.
Just on the edge.